6 people were murdered on a small farm in Germany in 1922. There were no signs of forced entry. Nothing was stolen. No one saw anything. But the most disturbing part was this. For days after the murders, someone stayed inside the house. The animals were fed. Meals were prepared. Smoke continued rising from the chimney. The killer never left. The farm was called Hinterkaifeck. It stood completely alone, surrounded by empty fields, nearly a kilometer from the nearest village. The Gruber family lived there. Andreas Gruber, his wife, Cecilia, their widowed daughter, Victoria, her 2 young children, and a new maid who had just started working there. Weeks before the murders, strange things began happening. Andreas found footprints in the snow. They led from the forest to the house, but there were no footprints leading back. He searched the entire property. He found nothing. At night, he heard footsteps coming from the attic. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Keys went missing. A newspaper appeared that no one in the family had purchased. It felt as if someone was already living there, watching them, listening, waiting. On March 31st, 1922, everything changed. One by one, members of the family were lured into the barn. We do not know how. We do not know why. But inside that barn, they were murdered with a pickaxe, blow after blow. There were no gunshots, no screams reported by neighbors. The maid and the youngest child were killed inside the house. The bodies were not discovered for 4 days. When neighbors finally entered the property, they noticed something unsettling. The cows had been fed. Fresh bread was sitting in the kitchen. The fireplace was still warm. Someone had been living there. With the bodies, the autopsy revealed something even darker. One of the young girls survived for several hours after the attack. In shock and in pain, she tore out clumps of her own hair before finally dying. The killer had time to stay, time to move freely through the house, time to cook, time to feed the animals. But why stay? Why not run? Police investigated dozens of suspects, former workers, neighbors, even members of the family's extended circle. One theory suggested robbery, but nothing of value was taken. Another theory pointed to a rejected suitor, but there was never enough evidence. Years passed, then decades. The case was reopened, again and again. Nearly 100 years later, modern forensic teams reviewed the evidence. Still, no answer. Some investigators believe the killer may have been hiding in the attic for days before the murders, listening, waiting. Maybe Andreas was right. Maybe someone had already been inside that house long before that night. The Hinterkaifeck murders remain one of Germany's most chilling unsolved crimes. 6 people, 1 isolated farm, a killer who stayed behind, and a house that kept its secret. Sometimes, the scariest part of a crime is not how it was done, but how calmly the killer stayed in the silence.